Today, when you've got more dollars than cents, you don't even get to play video games. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint. The church was a mod, everyone. It was just a real impressive mod.
Wow. The Nier community must be so mad.
Oh, no. Everyone basically thinks it's awesome. The three modders are releasing their tools and everything.
No, not because of the church, just... In general, they must be, right?
Be what?
Be mad.
Don't mind if I do. We haven't talked much about Diablo Immortal because why should we? From the original embarrassing announcement to present day, everything to do with the game has raised the ire of Diablo fans. The game's mobile origins, its monetization techniques, and yet Immortal has made an estimated $100 million. So I guess pissing off everyone they pissed off was a good business move because everyone they didn't piss off is apparently just flush with cash. Like YouTuber JT is All Business, who estimates he has spent around $100,000 on the game, and is now so powerful that he can't actually play the game because the matchmaking system can't find anyone else appropriately powerful to match against him. One could say that in a pay-to-win game, he has arguably won the game. But JT doesn't see it that way, since his inability to play a regular game of Battlegrounds PvP has meant he can't help his clan defend their title as top clan in some manner of endgame questline. Now, obviously, JT can do whatever he wants with his own money. He's allowed to spend $100,000 on Diablo Pocket, even if, in a thought experiment where I win the Supermax lottery, the notion of spending a big hundo on a video game makes the roof of my mouth itch. JT can do that. That's actually all the commentary I'm going to give on that. He is legally allowed to do that. And while many onlookers have enjoyed the warm hug of Schadenfreude as they watch JT unable to use his $100,000 character, Blizzard has now responded, though not directly to JT, by saying, quote, "We've heard feedback that some Diablo Immortal players are unable to find matches in Battleground PvP, or it might take a long time. We're looking into these reports and expect to roll out changes to the matchmaking system this week. We expect some kind of function like, if players spend greater than $10,000, then always matchmake, or something similar."
Sony is discontinuing a launch feature for the PlayStation 5, and trust me when I say you're probably not going to miss it. In fact, I'm pretty sure you haven't had a chance to use it at all. I say that not because you haven't heard of it, but more because you probably don't have a PlayStation 5. After all, they only came out in November of 2020 in the US, and people are still trying to find one and buy one. Mostly off Paul. Fat chance, though, the Paul clones keep them busy. The feature is called Accolades, and are little electronic kudos you can give to other PS5 gamers if they do something rare in-game, like being helpful, welcoming, or a good sport. Sony then collects all of that information and then, I don't know, sits in the back room at night and reads them. Sony is discontinuing Accolades this fall because no one's been using them. And again, I am sure it's because no one owns a PS5, to wit, the Paul clones again. And if the Paul clones had been using Accolades, that might have saved the system, but they haven't. And according to Paul, quote, "That's not because they're friends, because they aren't." And at that point, I just stopped asking about the Paul clones. And you should too.
Has mobile gaming finally hit its peak? According to a new report from analytics company Sensor Tower, mobile game spending and downloads in the United States declined 9.6% during the first half of 2022 to a mere $11.4 billion. This is being reported as very doom and gloom for the industry, and to add further fuel to the speculation fire, Pokemon Go developer Niantic has just laid off 8% of its workforce and canceled 4 upcoming projects, with CEO John Hanke blaming the moves on, quote, "a time of economic turmoil." All of this sounds very bad, right? Well, hold up, because in 2021, Sensor Tower reported U.S. mobile game spending rose 13.7% year over year to $25.4 billion. Newzoo, another analytics firm, reported that worldwide, people spent $93.2 billion on mobile gaming in 2021, a figure that itself was up 7.3% over the previous year. The previous year was, of course, 2020, the first year of a pandemic that saw consumer app spending grow 20% year over year and users spending 35% longer playing mobile games than they had in 2019. And what was worldwide mobile game spend during that year? App Annie, yet another analytics firm, estimated it at a cool $81 billion. So what we have here is 2 years of massive year-over-year growth predicated on everyone suddenly having nowhere to go, nobody to talk to, and nothing to spend money on. But now we have movies and concerts to go to, expensive groceries to buy, and slumlords to pay off. Of course, we're not going to be spending as much time and money on mobile games. Sorry, your profits have dropped to still higher than they were before. We need that money for Yankee candles that don't smell like anything and monkeypox rash cream.
It's Sonic's 30th anniversary, and if you're like me, you've just awoken from a coma, and while you were unconscious for the last 17 years, you journeyed to another world, learned the language, mastered magic, battled monsters, and longed to play old Sega consoles. Well, rejoice, traveler, because Sega's got another Mega Drive Mini coming out in October. The Mega Drive Mini 2 will feature 50 beloved games and Lightning Force. You know, the game where you decrease the mass of surrounding objects, thus making them easier to lift. With developers M2 in charge of the emulation, it's all shaping up to be pretty snazzy. It also features a bunch of Sega CD games, with a notable lack of a particular Sega CD game with the most enduring fandom of all time. But who knows? Maybe it'll be a secret pack-in?
But probably not.
Want one? Well, hey, this time there's only going to be 1/10 of the stock released outside of Japan compared to the original Genesis Mini. How many is that? Only Sega knows. And since you'll only be able to buy it direct from Amazon.co.jp, you'll be paying import fees on top of shipping fees, so look forward to the taste of what it's like to be Canadian. Or Australian.
Wake up, babe. New Mons just dropped. Yes, as part of the Pokemon Showcase event earlier this week, we learned a lot about the Mons of the new mainline games, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Some of the Pokemon turn into Crystal. Yeah, ones in Galar turned huge and did big smash, but the ones in Paldea turn into normal-sized crystal versions, and unlike Gigantamaxing, a terastallized Pokemon stays that way for the whole battle and is harder to say. Some of the Pokemon turn into motorcycles. That's not something I made up. The new legendaries, Koraidon and Miraidon, turn into motorcycles. And the motorcycles can also themselves turn into speedboats or gliders, depending on the transport needs of the player at that moment. And one of the Pokemon is a horrifying bread dog. Oh sure, Fido here looks cute. But the official Pokemon Twitter account described this carbohydrate pupper as having, quote, smooth, moist skin, which sounds like the most upsetting dog to share a house with. Furthermore, Fido can ferment things within its vicinity with its yeast breath. May be handy if you're an impatient home brewer, but otherwise, you've now got yeast living in your couch. And moreover, how do you think all of Fido's yeasty breath is going to interact with that moist skin I mentioned earlier? This walking infection vector looks adorable, but definitely smells like Marmite feet.
Counterpoint, have you ever smelled a real dog?
I'm led to believe they are perfectly dog.
There's a reason we pay other people to bathe dogs, Graham, and a reason we leave cats to their own devices.
Well, that reason, Beej, is because near running water, my cats turn into a Taz tornado. Don't do the voice.
Coming up, TinyCade is the cool new way to design tiny smartphone games using some cardboard, rubber bands, a couple of mirrors, and a smartphone. So, MacGyver this isn't. If you can guess what anime I was referring to in the Sega story, it was the Sega story, right?
Yeah.
My brain is already blanked. Feel free to leave it in the comments below. I don't need to know anything about your lunch that you had today. Just tell me about the anime I mentioned, I guess.
It's Sega's 30th anniversary, or Sonic's 30th anniversary.
They actually, the Genesis Mini, I think they missed the 30th anniversary mark for the Sega Genesis or something like that. So it's like, oh, well, it came out now. Things come out, right?
I couldn't stop chuckling when I saw that the actual box art for Lightning Force does indeed spell it Lightning Force.
Yeah, in North America, I believe it's actually Thunder Force.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
So if you've played Thunder Force 3 or Thunder Force CD or any of the Thunder Forces, this is another Thunder Force game. For whatever reason, in Japan, it was Lightning Force. And it's like,
Lightning Force.
All right, fine, great.
We've made everything way less.
I liked to dive into the Pokedex whenever they talk about, here's the things about these animals.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like
They're
when a
always
Drifloon comes up.
Always
it's-
horrifying, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So everyone's like, oh, no, it steals your children. It's like, sure. But the Fido thing is interesting. The smooth, moist skin thing, I'm like, yes, right.
Because he's bred.
Right.
And he has elastic skin because of the gluten.
Yeah,
I
because
guess.
he's dough. He's not
dough.
actually cooked bread.
Phi
yet,
dough,
right?
yeah.
So he starts as dough.
Can't wait to see the evolutions.
And I'm just like, if I just took a loaf of just a raw bread dough
Yeah.
and just rolled it around on my floor,
yeah. Oh.
I couldn't do anything with it anymore. Like it would just be, it's like using that goo to clean out your keyboard. It's just like, it would look like hell. And look at how long my hair is. I would have a hairy dog eventually. So, but the other thing is that Fido is protected because using his yeasty breath, he can make bread rise, right? Like that kind
You
of
can
idea.
ferment things with the yeasty breath.
It's
yes.
great, right? And so I'm like, okay, so at some point because we talk about how did we get dogs? It's like, well, wolves would come near us and we'd throw meat at them so they wouldn't eat us. And they'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, I like this deal. I'll just eat their free meat. And then domestication. And I'm like, so now Fido, how did we get that far with Fido? I have to assume that Fido come bounding out of the forest, and somebody who was making bread is like, and the thing bit into the bread thing, the unleavened bread he was making, and then ran off with a piece. And it's like, oh, fine, screw it, I'll let it have that piece. But the bite of the dog infected it with yeast, and then it rose, and they cooked it. Like, this bread is amazing. What happened? It's like, well, before I cooked it, one of those little like moist dogs ran out of the forest and bit into it, and now it turned into this. Is like, we have to get them to bite all of our dough, and they started doing that, and they didn't know why because you can't see yeast, but but the dog bit the dough, and the bread was good, and I think that's how it all came about. That's why they protected these little dogs.
I did see someone say that the Fido's yeasty breath is confirmation of the only form of non-plant life from our world that also exists in the Pokemon world, which is yeast.
Oh yeah,
We have to assume that bacteria exists there, but
Sure.
it's like there's no real world animal that also exists in the Pokemon universe because they're all Pokemon,
Right.
But someone's like, wait a minute, what about yeast? It's technically an organism,
Yes,
right,
absolutely.
and not a plant. So what, that's getting a little too deep divey for me, even for me. But I was like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah. We have to assume that you've been able to buy bread and stuff, and the Pokemon TV show. They're making malasadas when they're in Alola.
And I'm
and all
sure
that.
they're milking mill tanks and stuff like that. Literally, it's
yeah.
called mill tank. It's
Yeah.
like, what do you call this thing? A cow? It's like, no, it's a tank of milk
Yeah.
that walks around. Do you eat them? God, why would we do that? They make milk.
You jiggle it, you can hear it sloshing around on the inside. Yeah.
So I just like to take it to the natural conclusion of what happened in Paleolithic times when these things were running around. It's really how did you get the dog to like spit into the sake things in like Pokemon Legends Arceus? Like, do they show up there and it's like, oh, and then
I tried poking one with a stick, but it turned into crystal. I don't know what I'm doing.
yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. Terastallized.
Yep.
Which means, for short, we're going to refer to them as Rastas.
No, they're called. It's the terastal form. It's like it's the Gigantamax form. They're called the terastal form.
But you can't spell that without Rasta, and I think that we're just going to see people start referring to them as Rasta Pokemon. I hope that we start seeing them referred to them as and you can start that.
Yeah.
Please
There you
go
go.
nuts. Please get that one rolling. We don't have a nickname spreadsheet for this or anything, but start Rastifying your Pokemon, I guess. Christ, what else? What else would I even want to talk about at this point?